your source for everything paranormal. Parax.
Throughout the ages, history has been altered by word of mouth and the misrepresentation of those who might not have been present when some of the world's most significant events took place. Channelers Barry and Connie Strohm bring through the spirits of those who actually witnessed or took part in these historical events and lets them tell their stories in their own words. Welcome to Channeling History. And now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Channeling History. We're the only show where we speak to the souls that made things happen. And we're brought to you every week on the Parax Radio Network. I would like to thank you for not listening to the Super Bowl ending, as our show does seem to be on at the same time. So thank you for tuning in. I am Barry Strohm, your host, and I will be doing the channeling tonight.
And I would also like to thank you for tuning in to tonight's show. I'm Connie Strohm, your co-host, and I will be asking the questions of our spirit guests this evening.
Tonight, we're going to do a very special disclaimer. Our guests, Dr. Salk and Dr. Freud, are going to be giving some very specific recommendations. We want you to understand that you will be hearing these definite opinions concerning COVID-19, pandemic, and vaccines. That what you are about to hear is for entertainment purposes only, and your personal decisions should be based on your own research. The opinions and statements voiced on our show are the channeled words of the spirits, do not necessarily reflect our opinions, those of the Parax Network, or our sponsors.
Yeah, well, most of our shows will be dedicated to interviewing historic and famous figures. We're also planning special shows in the future in which we hope to solve mysteries, even some unsolved crimes. Next week, we'll be interviewing the spirit of the famous talk show host, Johnny Carson. His sense of humor brought millions to late-night television, and it should be a great interview. We welcome suggestions from you for future shows, and you can submit questions for our spirit guests to our email, channelinghistoryonparax@gmail.com. We will ask as many of your questions as possible tonight through the chat room. Last week, we had a wonderful interview with the Beatle great John Lennon. He told us about his life, his loves, the Beatles, and heaven. All of our previous shows are available on our YouTube channel in the name of Barry Strohm and Podomatic. So Podomatic.com. So just download or just to listen.
Tonight is very special. We're going to be talking with the spirits of Dr. Jonas Salk and Dr. Sigmund Freud. In the 1930s and 1940s, poliomyelitis was a disease feared because of the threat of paralysis and even death. President Franklin Roosevelt was diagnosed with polio at the age of 39 and suffered from paralysis throughout his 4 terms. I myself had a mild case of it when I was 7 years old and spent 2 weeks in the hospital as a result. And I can tell you from that personal experience, it was a very, very scary time. Dr. Jonas Salk was a research physician that believed the vaccine consisting of killed polioviruses could immunize without infecting the patient. In 1955, after testing 1 million children, he announced that the vaccine was safe and effective. He went on to found the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in 1963. That institute is currently a leader in COVID-19 research. Tonight, we will be asking his spirit to give us information about the COVID-19 virus and vaccines currently being administered to fight the pandemic. He will also be asked questions involving our modern culture.
Our second guest, Dr. Sigmund Freud, is arguably the most famous name in psychoanalysis and psychiatry. He was born in 1856, died in 1939, and he became famous for developing the practice of psychoanalysis, in which the goal was to bring what exists at the subconscious level up to the consciousness through talking about the complexities that are found in the different levels of the human mind. Although many of Freud's theories are discounted by modern psychiatric studies, he laid the foundation for thought and research. He was truly a pioneer in psychiatric theory at the time when study of mental illness was in its infancy. Tonight, we will ask him to speak to us about the short and long-term effects of the lockdowns and the fears created by the COVID-19 pandemic.
When we begin our channeling tonight, Connie will ask the questions, and I will answer the questions in the words of the spirits. Before we channel, we always say a prayer of protection. Connie will now say the prayer, and we will begin to channel with Dr. Jonas Salk.
God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our own egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God.
Tonight is going to be very, very special, and I know that there's a lot of information, and I'm looking forward to hearing for the first time myself. So let's begin speaking to our spirit guests. Connie?
Hey, good evening, Dr. Salk. Would you like to begin with a message?
Yes. I would like to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to be with them tonight. I was, I think, very lucky to be able to come up with an answer to the cure for poliomyelitis. When I was working during the 1950s, it was a very difficult time. Polio was feared by many. It was truly a terrible disease. I know many of you out there are too young to know what was taking place. But when an individual had a severe case of polio, they would lose the ability to actually breathe for themselves. They were placed in iron lungs that would assist them in their breathing. They were a terrible, terrible device for anyone to have to go into, but at the time, it was the only answer to save many of their lives. Today, you're being faced with many new challenges, medically and mentally. I hope that I will be able to answer some of your questions tonight, and I hope that my answers can help people to understand what the COVID-19 virus really is and what the answers are for them to achieve immunity. So we can proceed, and if you don't mind, we can start with the questions.
Okay, thank you. Your concept of using killed virus to build immunity was counter to medical thinking at the time. To what do you attribute your belief in that concept?
I felt that much of the research in the 50s was not producing the results. I tried to come up with something different. I think that in many of the instances of my thoughts were being influenced by my guides or perhaps even holy intervention. I came up with the idea that if you could induce a minor case of the illness with a weakened or killed virus, that the immune system could take over and provide safety and immunity to the individuals. I would like to think that our experiments and concepts were unique, but I also believe, now especially since I'm over here, that your guides play a large role in helping you to have ideas and to follow different concepts.
Okay, I think our listeners have been waiting for you anxiously. We have a question already from the chat room. Someone would like to know if you had any contact with aliens.
It is often hard to tell where concepts come from. Now that I'm over here, I understand much better how ideas are put into your heads. Keep in mind that aliens, guides, humans, all have the same soul energies. So it is possible that I could have had the help of aliens, just the same as I know that I had the help of guides. And it is also quite conceivable that the Holy Spirit himself put ideas into my mind.
Okay, who were the first individuals to test the vaccine?
I actually tested the vaccine on myself. I felt that it was very important that I had the self-confidence to test my own ideas and to prove that they were safe. So we tested myself and members of my staff initially before we reached out to the general public for help in our testing.
Okay, you never patented the vaccine, but you made it generally available without any personal benefit. Why did you do this?
I felt that my work should benefit everybody. I did not want to restrict how many people could afford to have the vaccine, and I did not want any interference from large companies in the distribution of the drugs. I felt that my work was truly to benefit the suffering, the poor, and any who needed the vaccine. I did not patent the vaccine, but made it available for general usage.
God bless you. That was a wonderful thing. Since you're on the other side, have you worked with any living scientists to find vaccines?
I try to interact through thought processes and influence with individuals that are currently doing research. I try to interact with those that are working at my institute to give them the benefit of the knowledge that I gained in my life and on the other side.
Okay. Would you explain how the COVID-19 vaccines work?
The COVID vaccines will help the individual recipient's immune system to build up resistance to the COVID-19 virus. It will take a short period of time after the vaccine is administered for the individual to build up his immunity. The concept of most of the vaccines are essentially the same. The two main vaccines that are currently approved are quite similar and will require 2 doses for the immune system to build up in the individuals.
Okay, should we expect side effects from the shots?
It is quite possible that when an individual is administered the vaccine, that they will experience a pains in their arm where the injection was applied. It is also possible that they can have mild fever as their body reacts to the vaccine.
Okay, back to the chat room. Dr. Salk, regarding future vaccines, will there be alternatives for those who have medicine sensitivities?
There will be alternatives, but the alternatives will probably not be as good as the vaccines that are being brought to market. People with sensitivities are special cases, and you need to discuss your individual cases with your physician before attempting to have any of the shots.
Okay. Would you comment on the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic?
As you know, the pandemic began in China. They were experimenting with different types of viruses that could be used to create pandemics. They did not intend for the virus to be released in their own country. There were many practices carried out in the Wuhan laboratory that were not up to true medical standards. That resulted in a premature release of the virus. Once the virus was released in China, they realized that they would be suffering many problems, both economically and medically, and they really did little to prevent the spread worldwide. There was definitely a feeling in China that the virus would have to spread among all the other major countries so that the economic impacts would be similar throughout the world.
So then the COVID-19 is a man-made virus.
It was, or it is, a man-made variant of a pre-existing virus.
Okay. Do you consider the current vaccine safe?
Yes. While there will be many that react in a negative fashion to the vaccines, in essence, they are safe for the majority of the people. Whenever a medicine or a vaccine is introduced, there will always be people that have unique reactions to such medications. But for the vast majority of individuals with normal immune systems, they should be safe.
Okay. How can we be sure it's safe without the usual long-term testing?
It is true that there has not been the normal long-term testing that would go into such a medicine, and we really cannot be 100% sure clinically what the long-term effects will be. However, those of us on the other side do have an advantage of looking to the future, and we do not see any long-term testing problems that cannot be overcome.
Okay, there are currently 2 approved vaccines, Moderna's and Pfizer's. Can you comment on them?
The Moderna vaccine is currently the most widely used one. They are relatively similar in context, and I feel that they are probably the same in risk categories for individuals.
Okay, which do you feel is the most effective and safest?
I think they are both effective and relatively safe. If I was to pick one, if I was walking the earth right now and was to pick one for myself, I would probably choose to do the Moderna.
Okay. Do you see any in phase 3 clinical trials that will be safer or better than those that are out now?
There is a vaccine, a single-shot vaccine in phase 3 that I think will be equally safe and effective. That vaccine should be available in the near future unless something would show up in tests, which I do not anticipate.
Okay. Are there any vaccines that you would avoid?
No, I think that your CDC is doing a decent job of analyzing medicines that are available. I do not really see any major problems. There have been some vaccines that have not lived up to expectation, and they have been withdrawn from tests.
Okay. As you grew older in life, did you feel that the use of vaccines should be reduced?
I did feel that vaccines can be overused. The hope is that each vaccine would work on its own and prevent diseases from happening. As I grew older and I saw the number of vaccines being introduced for different illnesses, I did have some doubts that introducing all of those various vaccines in the human body could have long-term deleterious results. So even though I preach or taught that vaccines for major illnesses were very important, I can indeed understand that many do have resentment and fears towards the use of many.
Okay. What is your opinion of Big Pharma?
Sadly, pharmaceuticals have grown in size and in power. The purpose of a corporation is to make profits. Sadly, in many instances today, the big pharmaceuticals are more interested in making profits than bringing out medicines that are economical and can be afforded by many of the poor. As we spoke earlier, when I brought out the vaccine, I did not profit financially from it. Sadly, today, Big Pharma is incredibly powerful and in many instances would rather treat a disease than cure it.
Does a cure exist for cancer at this time?
There are cures for certain cancers, and there are certain cancers that at this time cannot be cured. Once again, sadly, it can be much more profitable to treat an illness long term than it is to simply cure it.
Okay, we have another question from our chat room. Should they still be giving the smallpox shots?
In certain areas of the world, yes, they should be giving smallpox shots. In areas where the disease has been essentially eliminated, I would suggest that they would be better using caution in the administration of the vaccine.
Okay. We're seeing a rise in autism and ADD with our current generations. What do you see as the cause of it?
There are many impurities and artificial ingredients in your foods that can cause a reduction of immunity and can have an effect on the unborn while they are still in the womb. If a mother has consumed many of these impurities or could be using drugs or medicines that have an effect on the baby, it can result in an increase in what you're seeing as autism, ADD, or other birth or immune system problems.
Okay, Dr. Salk, one of your famous quotes is, "Hope lies in dreams, in imagination, and in the courage of those who dare to make dreams into reality." I think that was pretty wise. Do you have a final message for us?
Yes. If you dream and show imagination and work towards making those dreams come to a reality, it can often become a reality. Hope lies in motivation for individuals to dream and to hopefully use those dreams to improve the world around them. I would like to thank you for having me tonight. I hope that my messages were of some value. I hope that you will attempt to live healthier lives. Healthier lives will reduce the need for vaccines because your immune systems will be in better condition. And I hope that many of the large pharmaceuticals will redirect their energies towards making drugs more effective and available to those of the poor. So thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to bring my thoughts forward tonight. Have faith in your doctors. While there are many that would take advantage of physical problems and profit from the drugs that would cure them, In most instances, your personal doctors are wonderful people and will give you great information. So with that, I'm going to say good night. Thank you. And may God bless all of you. Thank you, Dr. Salk. That was a wonderful interview. Let us have a short break here, and then we'll be hearing from Dr. Freud.
Thanks for listening. Don't go away. Channeling History will return right after these brief messages.
In order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. Tune in every Monday at 10 o'clock for Dark Sun Rising on the Para-X Radio Network. From Haunted Road Media comes an exciting new novel by author Marla Brooks, Soul Connection, a deadly obsession. Two lost souls, ripped apart by murder in another century, find each other again in the present, only to discover that the murderer has followed them through time. Can their love save them, or will history repeat itself? Find out in this captivating new novel by Marla Brooks, Soul Connection, a deadly obsession. Available now on Amazon.com and at BarnesandNoble.com.
You've no doubt heard of Tango and Cash, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Perhaps it takes two to tango. Well, now, on the first and third Thursdays of each month, there's a show called Tango and Friends at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Para-X Radio Network with your host, Bruce Tango. And yes, there will be at least two to tango on each episode, sometimes even more. There's going to be lots of topics and lots of guests you'll all know and lots of surprises. Tango and Friends every first and third Thursday of the month at 8 p.m. right here on the Para-X Radio Network. Have you ever wondered what Jesus and his followers would say if you could receive their messages today? In his new book, Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits, channeler and author Barry Strohm answers those questions for you. Using his gift of spirit communication, he brings you messages from such Holy Spirits as Moses, John the Baptist, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Jesus, and even Mother Teresa and the Reverend Billy Graham. They discuss topics that are important for contemporary life in these troubled times. Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other booksellers. Signed copies are available on the author's website, spiritspredict.com. After reading this book, you will never again say, "What would Jesus say or do?" Welcome back to Channeling History. Now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Welcome back, everybody. We will now begin with the second part of our show, and we will interview Dr. Sigmund Freud.
Dr. Freud, thank you for coming this evening. Would you like to begin with a message?
Yes. As my colleague said, I would like to thank you for allowing me to come forward and speak tonight. It has been quite a while since I've been able to speak to individuals. In my day, obviously, it was very difficult to reach many because there were no internets or televisions or ways to meet greet people. Most of the work that I did was among my colleagues, and in those days there was quite a bit of dissension. So anyway, let's begin, and I will try to answer your questions.
Okay. What was the state of psychiatric care during the early 1900s?
Psychiatric care was in its infancy. In those days, people with severe mental illness would just be locked up, put away, and there was much dissension in whether the mentally ill could even be treated. I tried to be a pioneer. I tried to help people with mental illnesses, and I did my best to bring forth unique concepts in how the mentally ill should be treated.
Okay, what was your view of God and religion at that time?
I was caught up in the scientific world, and I felt that God did not exist and that religion brought much mental duress to many people.
And why did you come to that conclusion?
I was basing it on the scientific concepts of the time. Keep in mind that this was a period where a lot of the scientific thought and reasoning was in its infancy. There were many that understood very little about physical cures. It was a time that hospitals were treating patients differently, and it was a time that little money was available for the treatment and cure of the mentally ill. I felt that people, through their fears of what would happen in the afterlife and the pressures of organized religion, that would cause problems and would not contribute.
Okay, now that you're on the other side, how has your opinion changed?
Well, obviously, I now know that there is a God. I know there's an afterlife. And I understand how the system works over here. However, I would point out that there are still many religions that teach fear and cause mental duress among the individuals that follow it. There are many that, because of religious teachings, fear death because they do not believe that they will be judged properly. They fear that there is a hell. They fear that they will go to that place and that the fires of hell are something to be very feared. I can assure you that there is no hell, as many of the religions teach.
Okay, let me take a break here at to the chat room. Now that you're on the other side, can you better understand the true nature of human thought process?
Yes, but now that I know the true complexities of the human thought process. Even with the advances in your medicines and treatment techniques, there is a huge amount to be learned about the mental processes of the human mind. Its complexities are far more difficult to understand than even I imagined.
Okay, will you tell us about heaven?
Heaven is very difficult to describe. It is a wonderful place. There are many levels, so the experience that you will have in heaven will depend on the level in which you are assigned. But I can assure you that it exists. I can assure you that it is undescribable, and I can assure you that death is not to be feared, because there is indeed an afterlife.
Okay, from the other side, you're witnessing many different ways of attempting to stop the spread of COVID-19 virus. Besides the use of vaccines, what do you view as the most effective way to stop the spread of the virus?
At this point, the most effective way to prevent the spread of the virus is through the use of common sense. If you avoid contact with people, if you feel that you're getting sick and stay home, if you avoid any groups, then you will probably be able to avoid the virus. As my colleague spoke, I do approve of the use of the vaccines, and once enough of the people are vaccinated and build up immunities, the threat of the COVID virus should be minimized. However, keep in mind that there will be mutations and there will be many viruses in the future. So the use of common sense can help you prevent many such illnesses.
Okay, how do you view the use of lockdowns and isolation?
I believe that the side effects of lockdowns and isolation far exceed the benefits that can be gained in keeping people in isolation to avoid the spread of the virus. If an individual is essentially locked down by themselves, they are not allowed to use the benefits of social interaction. Isolation is a great cause of mental illness. Individuals need interaction in order to avoid depression and, even much worse, the idea of ending their lives.
Yeah. Is the lack of personal touch causing a long-term effect on the individuals isolated through the pandemic?
Absolutely. You can see it among your older population. Those that have been isolated without personal contact are suffering from depression. The depression is often affecting their immune systems. You are seeing an onslaught of dementia because of isolation, and you're seeing a great increase in the suicide rates. Isolation is something that, while sometimes an individual needs to be quarantined and kept away from others when they are sick, but when otherwise healthy people are isolated, it can cause huge long-term effects.
You know, what do you see as the long-term effects of the lockdowns?
One thing that I see is going to be a diminishment of the mental acuity of your elderly citizens. If the elderly mind is not kept active, then it will deteriorate. Without personal interaction, it is very difficult for the mind to keep active and to participate in the interactions that are necessary to keep the mind healthy.
Yeah. How would you have treated the pandemic?
I would have avoided severe lockdowns wherever possible. I would have preached or taught a common sense approach. What you're doing as social distancing, wearing masks, avoiding large groups. I would have acted as many of the governments did to avoid large groups such as football games, basketball games, etc. I would have allowed smaller group interactions at those games. I would not have completely cut out the crowds, I would have tried to maintain some semblance of normal civic interaction, but I would have truly tried to avoid the severe lockdowns that will be causing such long-term damage to your people.
Okay, and many people fear catching the virus. What do you see as the long-term effect of this fear?
I see many people that are petrified of catching the virus. I see that they have altered their lifestyles. Many fear to participate in any type of interaction, even though safe. And I see that this fear will cause much damage and psychological effects and negativity in the future.
Okay. Since you're on the other side, do you see any individuals using this fear to manipulate the masses?
There are definitely individuals that are interested in seeing how effective fear can be to manipulate the activities of large groups of people. For instance, if this fear contributes to voting patterns in the future, it will be utilized more and more to affect voting results that can change the direction of a country's future. There are definitely people that are watching very closely to see how this fear will affect the masses.
Okay, does the pandemic have underlying effects to the subconscious mind?
Absolutely. When a person has great fear or is in a state of isolation, the subconscious mind is certainly affected. While individuals may try to suppress these feelings in their conscious mind, the subconscious is capable of maintaining those thoughts and fears, and at some point the subconscious will inevitably overtake the conscious mind and bring those fears to the surface.
Okay, will behavioral social norms resulting from the pandemic be difficult to reverse once the pandemic has stabilized?
Absolutely. Once again, fear will distort behavior, social norms, and lead to personal physical traits that will be very difficult to reverse. For instance, if an individual has a fear of participating anywhere there are groups of people, they will find it will be difficult to go to events that create relaxation, or perhaps even will fear going shopping or participating in events that can lead to emotional and social well-being. Another example would be they would refuse to attend a wedding of a family member, which would result in them seeing other family members and creating a sense of relaxation and mental well-being. So the pandemic is definitely creating social norms that will also have difficult procedural problems for the mental health in the future.
Okay, back to the chat room. How do you change fear of the virus to a healthy respect for it and avoidance?
One way for that to happen is for your leaders to guide individuals from the social fears that they have built up back into a normal lifestyle. If people use your medium for communication to lead individuals back to normality, it will be possible to reverse the social norms that have been created through the pandemic.
Okay, have you ever dealt with social upheaval similar to this pandemic? And if yes, how did you handle it?
The flu epidemic of the early 1900s created much fear among individuals. None of us really understood what was causing that pandemic or really how to handle it. We tried to speak of common sense measures. It was understood that epidemics would come out of large crowds. We tried to teach calm, and it was very difficult because in those days we did not have the medicines that we have today. So, once again, common sense is always a logical answer.
Yeah. Okay, our current younger generations spend large amounts of time on their video games and cell phones. What do you see as the long-term effects of this?
When they are on their video games and cell phones, they are not having normal social enactments with others. They have got to learn that social interaction is critical for long-term mental health.
Okay, looking to the future, what do you see as the largest threat to mental health of our society?
I think that the largest threat to the mental health of the society is the ability of wealthy and powerful organizations and individuals to create situations of fear for the general public. If the truth is the main goal of your political powerful and those that control the media, then I think mental health can stabilize. Social media has given those that desire power and the ability to manipulate others a great weapon.
For sure. Okay, our current society in America is split with so much hatred. Do you see that hatred ending anytime soon?
Sadly, I do not. The hatreds are so deeply ingrained at this time that it is going to take a fair amount of time to overcome them. As long as hatred is being stressed among your politicians and that divide among the population is such a popular way of manipulation, it will be very difficult to cure the hatred. It will take a strong leader that can speak for everyone and bring them together. At this time, I fear that we do not see any strong leaders coming forth that truly want to end the split and the hatred in your country.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. Okay, what do you think as you watch what's taking place in the whole world society today?
I fear for the future of many of the countries and for your societies. Hatred, power, and greed has become so commonplace that it is often impossible to see a way for society to exist. The existence of weapons of mass destruction has created another fear that leads to much mental duress. Hopefully, the leaders of the world will wise up and understand that love and peace is the only way that social harmony can truly be a reality.
Yes. Do you have a final message for us, sir?
Yes. Thank you so much for allowing me to come back. Sometimes I feel that I am a great antique and that individuals no longer wish to hear my opinions. Since I am on the other side, many of my opinions have definitely changed, and I have a better understanding of how the future should work out if those fears and hatreds can be eliminated. Hopefully, you will have strong leaders step forward that will bring people together instead of trying to divide them. That will become a necessity if the countries of the world are to truly evolve and learn to get together. So thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to come through tonight. And I hope that my messages have done some good for some of the people. So good night. And should you wish me to return, I would be happy to do so.
Thank you, Dr. Freud. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Next week, we're going to be having the wonderful talk show host Johnny Carson on. It'll be a great interview. Carson, in my opinion, was the greatest talk show host ever. You can submit questions in advance through our email, channelinghistoryonparax@gmail.com. My 7th book, Spirit Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold, and it's also available on Kindle for immediate download. Signed copies are only available on my website, spiritspredict.com, or wordsofgodthenandnow.com. All of our shows and all of our channelings are available on our YouTube channel in my name, Barry Strohm. If you visit our YouTube channel, please subscribe because it's very helpful to us. You want to download our show tonight, you can go to podomatic.com, search Channeling History. All of our information, including links to our new podcast, A Weekly Message from Jesus, is available on our website, wordsofgodthenandnow.com. I hope you enjoyed our show tonight. Thank you for listening, and please join us Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the ParaX Radio Network.
God bless you all. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks for listening to Channeling History. Tune in again next week for another electrifying episode, as we never know who will make an appearance or who will come through the portal. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2020. Our Story Begins by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.